Looking to add some animations to your characters and spice up things on the UI? Well, that's exactly what we're going to be doing in this video, so sit back and let's get started. Hello and welcome to the video. I hope you're all doing well out there, especially in this crazy time we're in right now. Hope you're all staying safe. Today I'm going to be making a video addressing a question that someone brought up on one of the other videos, which was how to add animations to your characters. So far we have a lot of functions that we can run through these characters. We can make them speak, we can make them move around, change their expressions, which just means changing their textures, giving them different faces, poses, you know the drill. But today we're going to be adding animations, so that way through an animation controller we can mess with the position, the rotation, and the scale of the character and give them really unique animations that we wouldn't be able to replicate with standard movement. This is the root object of our character. We have our character name, it's the root object, and it holds the renderer. That's what we move through our move function. But if we're going to be animating, we don't want to use that same object that we'll be having running in a coroutine. If we try to do that for two actions at once, an animation and a coroutine like that, they're going to be interfering with each other. So the first order of business is we want to add a subroot to this character, which really could be an empty object. It doesn't really matter. Let's go into the scene view so we can see this a little better. So the subroot is going to be, we're going to want it the same scale of the character. And I apologize if I talk in circles. I'll try not to do that. So we set it to the size of the character and make sure that the anchors are maximized. We want it to be the exact same size, same settings as the character root. And I'm just going to call this anim because that's what I'm going to be animating, and the renderer is going to be a child of the animator. There we go. So we have our root that's controlled by movement through the character class, and the animator, which is controlled to give other special unique animations. So with that being the case, we obviously want to add an animator component. And if we have an animator component, in order to do anything, we need a controller. So inside of this dialog system, that's where I'm storing everything here. UI dialog, I have a little folder here for animations, characters, and you can see I was already doing something in here earlier. Let's just go ahead and get rid of all that. Okay, so UI character controller. If you want to create your own animation controller, you've never done that before, easy. Just right click and create. And then you want to go down to animator controller and then just name it something. Since this is going to be a controller that'll be universal for any character on our menu, I'm just going to call it UI character. Okay, so there's our controller. Inside of our animator, I'm just going to link the two together. So now we have an animator for our character. Now if we enter the animation tab, and you can find that under window and animation tab right there. So if we enter the animation tab, we have the option to create a clip on this object we just made the animator for. Let's go ahead and create it, and by default it's going to my animations characters, which is exactly where I want it. I'm going to make a default animation, something that we can revert back to and start off at for all of our characters. Now if you remember from way back, pretty much it's been about a year or so, in our movement video, that we don't actually want to move the transform directly. We want to mess with the anchors because world space and UI space are completely different. If we try to move in world space, it's going to be different when we change the resolution of the game. So inside the scene view, I just want to move my character here to the center. Don't ask me why. I just want to have him in the center now. Feels kind of weird having him off to one side. Set my anchors there. There we go. Alright, so here we are. Now, to do this, it's very easy. All we have to do is click this little red circle, which is going to automatically record any steps that we make. So we're starting to build our animation here, and like I said, we want to mess with the anchors. So if we just drag like the X value, then that logs in this little value called anchor minimum X. And we can do the same thing by dragging that, and now we have a value for max X and minimum X. If we do the same thing for Y, then minimum becomes an expandable option that now has minimum x and minimum y. So we want to do that for all 4 values, and that will give us the minimum and maximum anchors that we'll use to control the character. And we actually don't need anchored position or size delta, so rather than have some confusion later on, I'm going to go ahead and delete that and delete size delta, and you see that these anchors will change the scale and position of the character for us. That's what we want. So the minimum values are always going to start at 0, so that way the x will be all the way to the left and the y will be all the way to the bottom, and the maximum will be 1. 0 and 1 are our default values to have the character scaled correctly. Obviously it looks incorrect here. It's because it's not actually animating at the moment. When it animates in the game view, that'll scale with those anchors. So that's our default value, and you can see anchor position, size delta came back. It was a bit premature for me to delete them there, but I'm going to go ahead and, since I also want to affect rotation potentially, I'll go ahead and just drag that and then snap back to the normal position. So now it has logged the rotation of the character, and same thing with the scale. So now I have the potential to edit the rotation and scale of this character. So here's where we can really start to see this working. I'm just going to copy this and move over to this 1 second mark. And when we play the animation, see, nothing happens because it's the same keyframe. But right here in the middle, I'm going to change the minimum and maximum anchor values here. Now I can go and delete the anchored position and size delta because I don't need those anymore. And right here, I'm going to change the minimum and maximum anchors. I want to move him to the left side of the screen during this point of the animation. So you can see here 0 and 1. 1 is the max, 0 is the minimum. We always want to have this same padding whenever we're moving the character, otherwise it's going to stretch them. So if I go to change this to 1, then I want to change the maximum to 2, and that's going to move him by 2 or by 1 space to the right. So if I were to change this to -1, see, it stretches him, then I want to change maximum to 0. And that's how we move our characters. So keep that same offset whenever you're moving your characters. It looks like this actually needs to be -0.7, 0.6, 5? No, 7, 5. Close enough. So 0.75, since my math sucks, I'm just going to go with 8, and maximum is going to be, what, 0.2? Yeah. So 0.2, he moves all the way to the left, and if we just play that, then you see he's animating. And the cool thing is I can move the character here, and look, it's still animating, even though I'm moving that character. The position of that object will not affect the animator position, and vice versa. So we can use the movement command and the animation command simultaneously with no issues. Another good thing is if we come into this, you can see animating, and once we hit maximize on play, once we change our resolution and get much larger, yeah, I need to enable that and set my alpha to 1, then you see it scales with the resolution of the screen. So that's never going to fall out of sync with the size of your window. Perfect. So now we're able to make animations. That's how we do it for these characters, and you can do it for the rotation as well as the scale. I'm going to delete these values now and make a new animation, and I'll just call this hop. Going to make the character bounce a little bit, and I'm just going to come here, copy that from default, paste it in there, and we'll say maybe 1/4 of a second. Then we'll have where the character is going to jump, so we'll make that 0.5. Maybe that might be a little too long, I don't know, we'll see. Then the anchor max anchor men, I want to bring max y to 1.3. That's too much. 1.2, 1.1. Okay, so then minimum y is going to be 0.1. That doesn't seem like a whole lot. Okay, well, it's more than it seems. So there we go. And obviously that's a little too slow. I'm going to bring it down. See how that does. There we go. That's a little better. Take it a couple more. 1, 2. There we go. There. So that's the hop. Okay. Now inside of my animator, I'm going to make sure I have a transition to hop. And I'll just say this can happen from any state. I want to have this happen when a trigger called hop is set. So when hop is triggered, then we're going to play that animation, and once it finishes, then we're going to transition back to default, and I don't want it to have, I want it to have an exit time, but I don't want it to have a transition duration, 0, and we'll set that to 1. So it'll play the full animation and then immediately go back to default. Alright, but how do I trigger that? We're going to be doing that through our chapter file, of course. So our chapter files, as you remember, would look something like this. Let me load up a better example. Test dialog. So these were our chapter files, where we have our dialogue and our commands and our little menu over here. Okay, so we'll be writing our own new command to make sure that this character can animate. I have a little script here called dialogue actions. I believe this was originally in the chapter line manager or the dialogue system at the very bottom. I changed the location just so I wouldn't have two things at once. So dialogue actions, it's its own class right here. Wherever you have this located in your cases, we want to make a new case. So when we call a command, if the command, let's say it's something called, I'm gonna call it anim trigger. Actually, I'm gonna define what kind of animation it is in a parameter. So if the command is called anim, then I want to execute the function called command anim and pass in the data. As you may remember, the format here is we have our animation. Let me just go into the file here. We'll have what we call, this is the name of the animation, and then the parameters inside of parentheses. So that's what we're looking for to execute that case. And then that's the data that we'll pass into the command. So here is, we'll be doing something like, let me come to the end and we'll say anim. I'm going to make Nick animate. It's going to be a trigger, and the trigger is going to be called hop. There. So I need a command called command anim because I don't have one currently. Okay, there we are. I'm going to copy this little piece of information that just splits the parameters up. Alright, so we have our parameters, we split them, then the character, we want to retrieve our character from the very first value. So character C equals, and we'll retrieve it from our character manager, dot get, it's going to be the instance, dot get character. And we will take it from parameters 0. The very first parameter will get us our character. And you know, as I'm thinking, the different animations we can have will have different parameters that we'll want to pass in. And I don't feel like going through and defining optional parameters and all of that. So I am going to make a trigger and a Boolean separate. So anim trigger, Nick hop. Okay, so it will trigger the hop animation on Nick's animator. All right, string trigger equals parameters 1, the second parameter. So then inside of our character, we need to make sure that we get the animator that's attached to him. So I'm just going to come and add a new field for that. Public animator, anim. And down where we create the character in this initialization function, we have character. You see where we get our root object. Our root is right here. Root equals ob, which is the character object that was spawned, .getComponent rect transform. Now the animation is inside, it's not on that object itself, it's on the child. It's on the one that's called anim. So we want to say that anim equals ob.getComponent in children animator, and that will get us our animator, and then log it inside of our character so we can use it. So I'm going to want to make a function so we can access that. I'll do that by making public void and then anim trigger string trigger name, and I'll simply say anim.set trigger trigger name. That's literally all we need for that part. Dialog actions back here, then we'll say character dot anim trigger, and this will be the trigger. So by running this command, we will animate our character by the animation we pass in. And that by itself is going to work. So I want to make sure that I add this to my little command menu here, so that way I know how to use it from here on out, and I don't get confused later down the line. So we'll be setting animator trigger Nick hop, and I want to wait for 1 second. Next, and then say I hopped. Simple. Alright, so since we made changes to this character, I do want to make sure I update the prefab. And I just want to move Nick back to where he's aligned with those anchors again. So inside of my resources characters folder, wherever that is, right here, I am going to update Nick. Where is he? Right there. So I'm going to update him, replace it, so that way he'll be spawned, and if all is well, he will animate. Okay? And I get a null reference exception. What was that about? Not set to the instance of an object. What could that be? Renderer. Find renderer. ob.transform.find. Oh yes, since I now have that object anim, that's interrupting the path I was trying to find it at, so I just need to make sure I get that renderer child. I'll just say find anim dot find renderer. Just for now, I'll clean that up later. Okay, now we should be good to go. There we go. Alright, so we have our dialogue came up, and he's going to hop here in a second. Today we're going to experiment with animations. Okay, he did not. So why would that be? When the name here is anim trigger, let me just make sure that's... Yep, okay, so I did not set that right. And I had it as regular old anim before I decided to change it up to be anim trigger. There we go, save. So now, with that corrected, now let's re-enter it. Enter inside here. Okay, once I press space here, he should hop. Boop, there he goes. He hopped. Perfect. Okay, to demonstrate, I'm also going to move him at the same time, which if we were animated the same object that moves, we would run into a problem. Move Nick, and I want to move him to the far left of the screen. Why is there a space there? I don't like it when things are misaligned like that. Alright, so now we're going to move them both. We're going to move it and animate it at the same time. There we go. See? So as simple as that, we have animations for our characters. And that's what's great about the way this dialogue system is set up. You can add whatever you want. We'll go on to add a Boolean, but I do want to show that how this will work with brand new characters, how it's all universal. So my character artist for a game that I'm working on right now has just gotten another image here. And so I'm going to import a new character. Make sure in my images characters folder, going to make a new folder for this character. And then I'm going to import that picture. So this is going to be the default expression. Technically the happy, but you know. Alright, so duplicate. And I'm just going to delete that, change the name, and change the default image on the renderer, of course. Alright, so his picture is set, and you can see it's a little stretched there. Let me just close the dialog container, and I'm going to change the size of the renderer just a little bit. That way he's not so stretchy. There we go. Bring that back. Alright. And now I'm going to save him as a character. I already had a... There. So let's save him. Make a new original prefab. And delete that. Now inside of the chapter folder, I'm going to make glow come in. So enter glow. And then we'll say anim trigger glow hop. I can hop too. Yeah, everyone wants to hop, right? I'm so jealous I can't hop. Alright. Here we are. There's Nick. They're gonna overlap each other, but oh wait, no, I did move him. Okay, there we go. There we go. See? And he hopped. There we go. Hop. And then glow hops. It's universal for all the characters because we're using the same animation, the same object that's being animated, so we can use these interchangeably with all the characters. So I shouldn't have to explain how to do any other one, but just for anyone who wants to see, you know, I will go ahead and do a Boolean as well, so that way we can do some kind of looping animation. And I think the best thing for a loop animation would probably be a shiver to make a character shake. You know, as something startling happen. So animation, I'm going to go ahead and copy that default and create new clip. Resources, oh, not resources, UI, animation, characters, and shiver. Alright, paste that. Now these are going to have to be pretty close together. Minimum, maximum. The X is going to be max X 0.9, minimum X negative 0.1, and then just say 1, 0. Not entirely sure how this is going to look. We'll see. 1.1, and then 0.1, and then paste again. Something's odd about that spacing. I think I'm doing 1, 2, 1. Yeah, I knew something was wrong there. Okay, how does that look? I did not change something there. 1. There we go. I think that's a little too much. Yeah, that's way too much for a shiver. There we go, tweaked it a little bit. Turns out that 0.02 was a good amount for shivering. So there we go, that's the animation there. We need a little tweaking later on, but I ain't worried about it right now, I'll tell you that. So go ahead and paste that. So now we have shiver. Coming to animation, and shiver is going to have a transition from, I want to make this one a Boolean called shiver. Okay, when shiver becomes true, then we're going to enter this. It's not going to have a transition duration. I want that to be immediate, I think. We'll do 0.1. 0.1 transition time. Alrighty, and I want that to transition to default when shiver is false. There. Okay, come to my script, and I'll make another one here. Gonna copy that. Shift tab. We already have a case called anim trigger. This will be anim bool. Same type of data being passed through. So this one's going to be something like anim bool with a character, the Boolean name, and the value. So I'm going to have 3 parameters. Our character will still be the first parameter. The Boolean will be the second parameter. The Boolean name, let's call it that. And then the value is going to be bool.parse parameters 2. If you want to be safe about it, you can do that whole bool.tryparse method, but I'm going to be pretty careful with mine, and if I'm not, at least I'll know what I did wrong when I go back and look at the error code, but I'm not worried about trying to parse it. I'm just going to make it a bool all the time, so we'll say c dot, I want to change this to a anim bool, the Boolean name, and the value, which means I need to make that command inside of the character now. Public void anim bool, string bool name, and then the Boolean value. And that will be anim.set bool. We'll set the bool name to the value. There we go. And now let's go ahead and say anim bool. I cannot type. Wow. Glow, we will make him shiver true. It's going to be cold. And after that, we'll say anim bool glow shiver, set it to false. Going to wait for like 1 second and then close the whole thing out. That should be enough demonstration. Scene. Come in here. Alright, here we are. What was that null reference? Index was outside the bounds in the array. Val command anim. Command anim. Did I just... Yes, I did. I did the same thing. I used the same trigger for them both. Ow. That's nice. Okay, anim trigger, command bool. I cannot believe I just did that. It helps to pay attention, folks. It really does. So command trigger, and I get to go back and clean up my mistake now. You gotta love the power of editing. Cut out a whole 2 seconds there. Alright, let's do that again. Here we go in experiments, animations. He just hopped. There we go. Glow can hop too. There we go. And now we just set the bool and he's shivering. Next, we just stopped it. There we go. That is how you do animations. Now you should be able to do any kind of animation you want with your characters. Really give them some unique movements there. That's something that you could not do with the regular movement, so I'm glad that this person brought that up, because that was a good addition to put in here. And just to show that it works, I'm going to come into the Shiver script and also change the rotation and the scale of this character here. So the anim, going to come right to the middle and just rotate him and shrink him down, make for a really weird looking animation. There you go. It works. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Drop it a like if you did, and you'll be seeing more because I am getting back to making videos now. There are still a couple more things to add to this, and one of them is another feature someone was requesting, which was how to control volume inside of this engine. So that'll be another video. And until then, have a good day and be safe.